All right, I wanted to welcome Noda from Stat, and I met Noda probably about a few months ago. We connected because we both work with, chiropractors and some physical therapists as well, and really thought that his platform was very cool and could be useful to a lot of you. So yeah, would love to have him kind of chat a little bit more about his platform and how it came about.
Well, yeah, it started in practice. So it started from a lot of pain, just kind of like on how you started. And we had a busy practice and, I had a lot of moving parts and we had like 7 spreadsheets. We had a stat tracking software, a texting software, and marketing software. And essentially, we ended up spinning up this software. And like the long story short is one of the things that we did to grow our software, our practice was like we did these educational seminars, and then we are doing
Okay, yeah.
seminar business. We are doing 100 to 200 seminars a month, a lot of times 150 to 200. Ended up hiring an engineer in that business. And then in between projects, since he was a salaried employee, he worked on this tracking software for tracking patients and tracking employee activity. And then I didn't have time to start this business. And then I had friends use it. I was in like masterminds and like people like hooking it up. And then like I started getting calls from like some random people say, "Hey, it's like I know so and so. They said they got you got this software. Can you hook it up?" And I did install the software on there. And yeah, we had like a couple dozen people using the software. We didn't have a
Nice.
name for it. I wanted to turn into a business, but I just didn't have the bandwidth with the two other businesses. And then because we had like just under 50 employees, kind of like at the time between the two. And then, so I talked about turning into a business for about a year before COVID. And then it turns out when COVID happened, putting old people in a restaurant 200 times a month was not a good business. So I've been like talking about how am I going to get this time? And at the beginning of COVID, first I freaked out for like 2 days. So like I'll be honest, I freaked out. And then like by the end of the week, I just told myself to quit being kind of like a little bee and just said, I've been talking about how am I going to find this time, where I'm going to find this time, praying on where I'm going to find this time. And then it just dropped in my lap and I decided I was going to go for it. And then there was something else that happened before that. So kind of like at the beginning, before COVID and through COVID, my dad was sick and he eventually passed. But it turns out at the end of everything, you're not wondering about a watch, a car, a house. It's just meaning, purpose, and I had this software that was helping out these people that we weren't even selling or supporting. And it was like, this is something I want to do. So like that's kind of like a few different things, and it was a perfect storm of me making that decision. And so we just decided, prayed on it, thought on it, and by the fifth day of COVID, we just said, fuck it. We're going to go for it. Young enough to screw it all up. And I'm going to do this thing. And if I would have known how much effort it would have taken to get here, I probably wouldn't have started. But like I was naive enough to think that, hey, I've started all these other businesses and they've been successful. So I'm going to start a software business. And it's fine now, but holy cow, that was hard. So like, and then yeah, like essentially like the big frustration was like the lack of communication between all these different platforms. And like in my mind, like EMR, EHR has all this static data and it has all the data. It's great, but you could run a report on it and it's a PDF or something like that, or it's an Excel file and it's instantaneously out of date. And then you still have to take action on it. So, like, our idea from the very beginning, still today and tomorrow, and the vision is just taking that data and making it actionable, right? So, it's like taking an example of someone no showing for an appointment. Someone no shows, offices will call. They'll have like some offices will have like an automated texting software that will text them. And if they respond to the text or the call, it's great. But if they don't, what happens? So with ours, we'll follow up again. And then we give you a list of the non-responders in like one little workflow. And you could text, email, schedule, make a note, set a follow-up all in one spot. And then if the admin people knew that they're getting measured on their rescheduling rate and you hold them accountable, then voila, you have a better rescheduling rate. And we do the similar thing with retention, recalls, new patients, and things like that. And that's kind of like the whole premise of the software.
Yeah, I think I've heard from many practice owners, and I think it's like EMRs are notoriously weak in reporting and just data collection. I've never really understood why, but I'm glad that you're solving
Uh,
the
well,
problem.
it's not the problem that they're trying to solve, right? They're trying to solve scheduler, billing,
Yep.
and documentation. And like everything else is a nice to have. Like people complain about the different reports or like the lack of a workflow, but they're not going to leave over that,
Yep.
right? But if the billing sucks and you're a heavy insurance practice and your billing workflow sucks, you're going to quit. If your soap notes are too slow, too clunky, usually people are going to think about quitting. If the scheduling sucks, they'll usually tolerate it because unfortunately, a lot of the people that are paying for the software aren't dealing with the scheduling, right? And then everything else I feel like is just a nice to have.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And your platform, is it integrated with EMRs? Does it sit inside?
It just syncs with it. So like we have a couple server-based integrations and some cloud-based ones. And yeah, it's just going to send data back and forth. And then you would have both of them open, but it's not going to be literally inside the thing. It's going to be like a tab, like opening up Gmail, right? And you'd have a single page application in there.
Interesting. What are some data points that you found that, new customers and new providers have really said, like, wow, I had no idea that.
Most of the time, the big aha is they think that they have all these people coming in and they're not. That it's like not so much the data point, like they already have an idea of some of the data points, but when they actually see the people, like, hey, this person's been out for a month. I thought they were just here. This person's been out for 3 months and they're so we have our recall algorithm and we'll take a look at all your old patients, look at their scheduling habits or payment habits, and then based on that, we score them and put ones that are more likely and more valuable at the top and less likely to schedule and less valuable at the bottom. And then, if you wanted to filter it down by their last visit or a provider or a case or an insurance or an age or sex or whatever, you can. But for most people, like they're just going to let the algorithm do its thing. So, like, there's that. And then with the metric side, like, I see both ends. So, like, I'll see ends where people probably measure too many things, and I see where they measure nothing. And for me, with like a metric is I don't think you should have a ton of them, right? There doesn't have to be a ton. And if the metric changes and your behavior doesn't change, then it's probably not worth measuring. And I see that happening, like they read in a book or heard from a consultant, measured these things, and they don't change their behavior. And so I see kind of both ends where they measure too much, don't do anything about it, or they measure too much and they don't know what to change because there's too many things. Like I see people measuring 200 things, but there's like dozen, maybe 2 dozen max things they. So it's like, let's just take like patient visits and like retention. So like retention, I like looking at how many visits they have scheduled out over the next 30 days. A lot of people like patient visit average and other things like that, but I never like PVA because you get punished for like getting a bunch of new patients, right? So if you look at how many visits they have scheduled out, a big predictor of retention is block scheduling. That means that they're scheduling out people for multiple visits. And I don't care whether you're scheduling out 6 visits at a time or 60 visits at a time, you have to do that because, like, we did like an internal study and I was just curious. I looked at 750 chiropractors, and then if they scheduled by one visit at a time, they lost 50% of their patients between visits 3 and 6. And then if they just scheduled, like, say, 6 at a time, 12 at a time, I don't care what it is, but you're block scheduling 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks at a time of visits, you're going to double, triple, quadruple. Now, the people that schedule out more visits will have a higher, like, retention rate. But and I looked at a lot of numbers, and it's just kind of weird, like being on the provider side, sitting in these like coaching groups and masterminds and stuff like that. Like it seems like it's not that real, but like, and I know you could see it on your end, but like when you're looking at tens of thousands of data points, those outliers, they stick out like a sore thumb. And it's just the patterns become so obvious when you look at that much data. But when you're looking at a single practice or a single provider, it's not as obvious. But so that's why I like Future 30, like how many visits they have scheduled over the next 30 days. And that's more of a provider stat. Yes, you could put on the front desk, but the provider is the one that has to really talk to them about that. And that's going to make a huge difference. And then I like future scheduling rate. So we'll look at the percentage of people that came and left with a future appointment. And that's going to be more of a front desk stat. And that's going to be what I call as a leading indicator, right? So like let's just, and I recommend 75% or higher. So 75% is a growing practice. And the average chiropractor is between 50 and 60%. So if you're 75 or higher, kudos to you. Give your front desk a pat on the back. They're doing an amazing job. And if they're 50, 60%, that's average. You don't need to fire them, but like you could train them on that. And it's just um, role playing with them and like getting them to do a better job of scheduling them out. And then together combined, the outcome is going to be your patient visits, right? So like, and that's for visits. And a lot of people talk about visits. And another one that I don't see a lot of people talking about is like just how much you collect per visit. Because like for us, we looked at future 30, future scheduling rate visits, and then we looked at your dollar per visit average. And yes, you're going to look at collections like billed, charged, collected, applied, and stuff like that. But like I was always looking at my dollar per visit average and trying to get that higher and trying to get the visits higher. Right. And, I see people is like, oh, we see like 1,000 people a week. But it's like, but you're collecting $18 a visit. And then here's another number metric for you. Like, because I'll teach CEs to Kairos, and a lot of people don't realize how much $5 means. So, like for a practice that sees 125 visits a week, and you work, say, 50 weeks a year, $5 is, I think, like 31,000, like 500 or something like that. So when the insurance cuts your payments by $5, that sucks.
Yep.
So
Yeah, this is really helpful insight. Yep.
yeah, so it's just there's a lot of different things to kind of measure, but like those are like some high level things. And then, like if you're advertising or even if you're not advertising and it's word of mouth, like, I want to know how many new ones, how many showed, how many started, and then maybe break it down to where did they come from and then how much you collect from them, right? And then you could get like what you collected from the people that you got from like Facebook and divide that by how much you spent on that, and that's going to get your return on advertising spend, right? And then that number is 100%, still not that good because you have operating costs, right? So if it's 200% or higher, you're sitting pretty. So like it, and you could measure different things. Like you could focus on different behaviors, like measuring different metrics. And I just always trying to find like what metric can I put in place to help change this person's behavior? And so I think stats are great. Like some of my friends have accused me of being a humanoid before, but like it's just, and it's not like I don't have emotion. It's just I'm very agnostic at how I do things. Like it's like here I am. This is where I want to get to. I don't care how I get there as long as I'm following kind of like my guidelines, my values, my core values. And it's like I want to get to this destination. I'm not going to lie, cheat, and steal. I'm not going to stab someone in the back. I'm not going to step on like it's just not me. Like for me, like I like competition. I'm going to compete in an honest and ethical way, but like I'm not going to do things to like undercut my competition in an unethical way. So it's like for me, it's just how I prefer to perform. But it's so for me, I've always liked numbers and stats. Like I remember at a consultant's book, Management by Statistics, and like Measure What Matters and all these different things. And it's just the numbers don't lie. And, like when the numbers are going up, it's like we just try to, if they're going really up, try to figure out what the heck did we do? Let's write that down. Let's document that. Let's do more of that thing. And then, if it's going down, what changed? What do we have to change? Right. And then if it's starting to plummet, we got to change that really quick. Right. And we got to get all hands on deck. So it's just, we just managed everything by statistics. And for me, it made sense, right? You're going to have your favorites. human parts of it. But like at the end of the day, stats are stats, and we always try to get like a stat related to each position if possible, or a department.
And I think that's great advice to focus on the ones that are actionable too. So yeah, totally agree on that. What are you able to share pricing for your platform and also just
No,
how
it's
you
like we're not one of those super expensive softwares, so we try to be affordable to every chiropractor. It's 199 to 299 a month. It's right on our website. We don't hide it. And then if they go on annual, they get 20% off. We're we try not to nickel and dime. So in general, like with the majority of features, when we roll them out, we just roll them out. If it doesn't cost us per use to use it, we just roll it out as part of the platform. Like we have a mobile app for practice members. We're rolling out a patient mobile app. Honestly, by the time your user sees this, it's probably going to be out. So it's like getting published right now. And that one, we don't charge for that. Like it's just part of it. But like like we're getting ready to release our AI receptionist. And as you know, when you do AI, there's a per minute charge and you have token charges and stuff like that. So like I would love to make that free, but like we're gonna charge for it, but like we're gonna based on the prices I see, like I feel like we're going to be 75 to 80% cheaper than the ones at Look. So like we have to charge for it, but we keep it like extremely affordable. Like we have a missed call text back feature where if someone calls, you don't answer it, play a voicemail, uses AI to transcribe it, text them back. You could access that in your mobile app or the web-based app. And like we'll have a competitor that charges $200 for that. We charge $30 for that. So like we just try to do everything cheaper and go deeper, and we're focused on chiropractic, and we're not a private equity group that's trying to jump into dental, jump into this, and the private equity groups just operate a different way. So,
Awesome. Well, thanks for so much for giving the overview of TrackStat. And yeah, I could definitely see a lot of our clients finding a lot of use out of the platform. And so, yeah, I'll link the URL and email so you can get in touch with Noda.
yep. And we do a free trial. So if you want to try it out for a couple of weeks before you buy it, that's probably the best way to do it when you go to trackstat.org. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks.
Take care.